Good morning, everyone. Hello, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I, as promised, am about to read my latest essay, Lady MacBiden. It's on Substack, and the sub-headline is Questions for FLOTUS, which stands for First Lady of the United States, July 13th, the date of the attempted assassination of President Trump and civil war in the White House. And I just want to note before I start reading this that I wrote it 3 days ago, and literally the next day, the New York Times abundantly confirmed my analysis, my inference based on my former life as a political consultant, that there was a civil war in the White House, and other aspects of the Civil War that I spelled out. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it. It's fairly long, but I think it's an important, really important prediction, especially today when we wake up to, as I've been warning you for 2.5 years now, those of you who watch War Room, and kudos to the incarcerated Steve Bannon, because he was the only person at a national level giving space to this kind of warning. Those of you who are in the posse know that for 2 years, if not more, I've been saying in the 4 months leading up to the election in 2024, there will be cyber attacks, there will be power outages, there will be escalating violence, there will be violence against opponents, and there will be food shortages and terror attacks. So, you're welcome. It's frustrating to be called a conspiracy theorist when these events are so easy to predict based on a close reading, which I've done in my book, The End of America, of times and places in history when a civil society was being undermined, a democracy was being overthrown. That's where we're at right now. That's what's happening. So before I launch in, I'm just going to say to all of you who have called me a conspiracy theorist, you're wrong, I'm right. And to the rest of you, please go get enough food to last at least a month. Go get enough water to last at least a month. If you haven't already, print out your assets. It's not enough to back them up on a hard drive. You've got to print them out. And, obviously get what you need to defend yourself and your family lawfully and as peacefully as possible, because this is not the end. It's just the beginning. All right. May you all be safe. May I just check them. The subtitle is Trump Assassination Attempt. Does Jill Biden need to be questioned? Can you all hear me? Let me know. I am careful about my words. I don't throw around accusations. And for the legal record, I am not here making an accusation. This essay is deliberately written so as not to be an act of defamation or of libel. Here is my immediate response on Saturday, July 13th, to the assassination attempt. As I warned you all in my recent essay, What Time Is It?, about the incarceration of Stephen K. Bannon, the attempt on President Trump's life on July 13th was sadly predictable, as we are in the period foreseeable per the historical record in a declining democracy of the physical mopping up of the opposition. And you'll see it. Assassination attempt against President Trump last Saturday in Butler, PA, I need to talk about Dr. Jill Biden and her office. I believe Dr. Jill Biden and Hunter Biden and Dr. Jill Biden's staff need to be investigated subsequent to, my awkward grammar is to avoid the legal repercussions of saying in relation to, the assassination attempt against President Trump. In general, being careful about libel law, I need to discuss the realities of what days are like in the offices of POTUS, President of the United States, and of FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States. We all know by now that President Trump's Secret Service detail left around him gaping vulnerabilities. My husband, Brian O'Shea, at Brian O'Shea SPI, who spent a career in military intelligence, and then in private security, including in close protection. Indeed, that was how I met him, as he had to secure me and my home after I had received death threats, examined at my request videos of President Trump's speech in Butler, PA on July 13th, 2024, assessing the shot that struck President Trump's right ear and the shots that killed heroic fire chief Corey Comparatori. Brian identified at least 10 major security practice anomalies. These ranged from a missing third counter sniper team, meaning that a fan of a given area is left unprotected, to the fact that and neck fully exposed after shots were fired, to the fact that neither building from which the alleged assailant, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, fired his shot or shots, nor the parking lot in front of it was secured, to the fact that one of the Secret Service agents fumbled so obviously with her weapon, not succeeding in replacing it in its holster, that this revealed, in Brian's view, a lack of familiarity with the weapon, as well as inadequate training. And I just want to pause to note that since I wrote this nearly 5 days ago, many other anomalies to the point of brazenness have been disclosed, including by Secret Service. For instance, to add to this list, Secret Service has claimed that it was the police, the local police, that were in charge of the building, not Secret Service, and we'll get to that. And the head of Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, has claimed that she didn't put a sniper on the building in question because it had a slope, and many other anomalies have emerged. So this was early, but please add those in your mind. Since we recorded that video, many other important anomalies have been identified by commentators. Capping the many anomalies is the statement that Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle made to ABC News, explaining that no Secret Service snipers were placed on the roof of the building from which Crooks allegedly fired because it had a sloped roof. I just mentioned that. 4 days after the assassination attempt, as I write, it's clear, and not a conspiracy theory, that this event was not a simple tragedy, some random disgruntled kid somehow successfully firing at a president in spite of all the efforts of what are supposed to be the best security forces in the world, but that other forces are at play. I need to explain some important things about this story based on my long experience around decision makers in comparable contexts. The first is that in events such as this, nothing happens by accident. I was the wife of a Clinton White House speechwriter. My then husband spent his days traveling to events such as the one in Butler, PA, or to the one at which FLOTUS, Mrs. Biden, spoke at the same time in North Pittsburgh, PA, or to other similar White House events. So our household was familiar with the mechanics of the events that presidents and first ladies attend. I later became an advisor to Dick Morris, President Clinton's chief campaign advisor for his reelection campaign in 1996. Still later, I was a formal campaign advisor to Vice President Gore's campaign for the presidency. In all of these contexts, which spanned years, I witnessed closely the process by which a president's staff and a first lady's staff, and then a vice president and his staff work alongside and in very prescribed ways with a campaign. And I saw how staffers manage the day-to-day of the principal's jobs. People need to understand this process of how decisions are made during campaigns in order to avoid the mistakes in interpreting the events in Pennsylvania that many are now making, and in order to avoid being spun by the spin to which Americans are now being subjected. I wish to stress that nothing at that level happens spontaneously or casually. While certainly there can be a specific staffer who is incompetent and who may make a specific mistake in event planning, that staffer will be quickly fired. Repeated sequential mistakes, let alone multiple mistakes at the same venue and time, has had as a routine, daily SOP, meaning standard operating procedure, rigid process from which there is never any deviation, from which no deviation is possible, layers and layers of scrupulous vetting by multiple senior staffers and by multiple agencies. Every detail is cleared by many layers of officials with various forms of authority long in advance. The current media and White House spin is that the First Lady spontaneously decided to speak at an event promoted for at least a week in advance, a Sons and Daughters of Italy event for 200 at the Rivers Casino in North Pittsburgh. I state, and anyone who has worked in or with a White House can confirm or else challenge this, that there can be no such thing as a spontaneous addition to the schedule on the campaign trail. FLOTUS or POTUS can't spontaneously change the schedule. An event is proposed during a campaign by the campaign manager. Julia Chavez Rodriguez is President Biden's campaign manager. Interestingly, she formerly worked for him in the White House as senior advisor and White House director of intergovernmental affairs, Joe Biden presidential administration. Jennifer O'Malley Dillon is President Biden campaign chairwoman. She too was shifted over from the White House as she was senior advisor and White House director of intergovernmental affairs, Joe Biden presidential administration. Mia Ehrenberg is President Biden's campaign's national spokesperson. Somewhat creepily, she came over from having been press secretary for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And there's a picture of Mia Ehrenberg in my Substack, who looks like she's about 12, no disrespect to young women. But what's notable is that she's from DHS. It's notable for several reasons to have White House staff transfer to serve as campaign staffers, in part because FEC law, Federal Elections Commission law, means careful separations between the two teams. The point here is all the senior people in both the White House and on the campaign know very well how secure vetting for an event works. A proposed event has to be signed off by the campaign director. It also has to be signed off by the chief of staff at the White House. Since the resignation of Ron Klain, Jeff Zients has been the White House chief of staff. Very important finding that I located. It may have been reported before, I wasn't aware of this. He also joined the Facebook board of directors in 2018. I don't know if he's still on the Facebook board of directors, but to me, that would be a gigantic conflict of interest and one that would have been unlawful when we served in the White House or with White House staffers or with the campaign, because at that time, to put their assets in a trust, a blind trust, and also had to sever conflicting conflicts of interest. And this is a clear conflict of interest. He would also be very familiar with secure planning, as in November 2020, he became a member of 3 agency review teams for the Biden transition: Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Homeland Security. So what I'm stressing here is that you've got people in senior leading the Biden White House and senior on the Biden presidential campaign with backgrounds in the Department of Homeland Security, which is very weird and rare, right? To be, because it's a different skill set for the White House and to lead a campaign. And also who have this massive conflict that he also benefits from one of the biggest tech platforms and is paid. Most board positions at that level are very substantially paid. We need to check by Facebook, which again, in turn, is one of the biggest advertising media for political advertising. So it's a circle, right? I mean, he has the power to influence Facebook to dial down the algorithm for President Trump's or for Republicans digital advertising for their campaigns. It's shocking. I mean, this is a whole other big story that needs to be fully elucidated. Both the campaign director and the chief of staff are reacting when they're scheduling to requests, which are nonstop, from donors, grassroots groups, other politicians, etc., for the principal, meaning POTUS or FLOTUS. These requests go to the scheduler for both the White House team and for the campaign, two different people. The top White House staffers meet daily with the chief of staff to review the set of proposals and events for POTUS and FLOTUS and to refine the schedule. The same process takes place with the campaign team. I'm going somewhere with this this org chart. The campaign team puts their requests formally to the White House chief of staff and scheduler. Lawyers review each request and indeed any contact between the campaign and the White House to avoid the campaign violating FEC law. Each request goes to all senior staffers, including the chief on the schedule, put by the scheduler, a very important influential person, onto the all-important schedule. That means that top people in the White House put the First Lady 54 minutes away at the very same time as President Trump's speech and the attempt against him. The process of clearing an event to put on the schedule is multifaceted and ironclad. The speech that will be given at the event has to be checked by the relevant departments, State Department and Pentagon if it involves foreign or military affairs, HUD if it mentions housing, and so on. If there's anything in the speech that is wrong or that causes political blowback, it has to be revised and resubmitted until it is cleared, and so on. The people on stage with the principal, introducing the principal, near the principal at any time, all of which must be carefully choreographed and or in photos with him or her, must all be vetted well in advance. The backgrounds of everyone must be checked, both in law enforcement databases and by opposition researchers in-house. Did they say something racist in 2004 or harass an employee in 1998? It all has to be examined in advance in order to protect the reputation of the principal from unexpected risk, blowback, or bad press. The physical venue has to be thoroughly checked for every event. Physical plans of the venue, including, to my knowledge, architectural plans, are sent to the White House and to campaign staff and are available to both the advance team and to the security team. Again, this process is recalled from my experience 24 years ago. It may have changed. The route from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the venue, from the venue to the hotel, from the hotel to the airport is checked by multiple layers of the staff of this daily meeting, as well as by security services, ingress and entering and exiting, to and from the venue, pardon me, must be similarly checked by the Secret Service. Roofs and basements are checked, perimeters and parking lots are checked. A security plan, which includes what to do in an emergency, is devised by the Secret Service for that specific venue and then signed off by the Secret Service in advance, and only then can the event be placed onto the schedule. If the venue is not easy enough fully to secure, the Secret Service will say so. That is a crucial, central part of the Secret Service's job, informing the White House staff and the campaign staff when something they hope to plan is not safe. If that happens, the staff cannot overrule the Secret Service, to my knowledge. Even POTUS or FLOTUS, to my knowledge, cannot overrule the Secret Service. If an event or venue is not safe, and if the Secret Service says this is not an informal, easily misunderstood verbal back and forth, but it is quite formalized. The scheduler cannot okay an unsafe venue for final placement on the schedule. This requirement to vet all attendees near the principal and to clear the safety of a venue or an event can cause a lot of friction at the daily meetings. Everyone at that daily meeting has an agenda and wants his or her own event or an event serving his or her own donors or constituents, or one showcasing his or her policy goals to be placed on the all-important POTUS or FLOTUS schedule. The venue and surroundings will also be physically checked by the security team in advance of the event. The advance team, a separate group, also checks it in advance, hence the name advance team. I really hope you're paying attention to this. This happens days before. If there is a problem, that previous advance trip is intended to surface and remedy it. All this protocol means that the perimeter, the parking lot, the rooftop, the basement, the stage, the bleachers, even the security fence that videos show in Butler, PA, checked and okayed in advance, all the way up the chain of command for the Secret Service. Standard SOP in this way prevents any Keystone Cops type scrambling around impediments, such as barrier fences, any confusion, and any plaintive cries of "what do we do now?" all of which we saw and heard in Butler, PA. Evidence of this prior planning is the diamond sharp, thoroughly drilled, hyper certain coordinated reaction of Secret Service in 1981 to the shooting of President Ronald Reagan by John Hinckley. This earlier Secret Service response took President Reagan out of the shooter's range in seconds, not as in this recent case, many long minutes. See the difference for yourself. And I linked the Hinckley video in my Substack. People are saying it's now access it, but you really should take a look at it. It's night and day. The assertion now by Secret Service that local police in Butler, PA were in charge of securing any part of the venue is baffling to anyone who has worked in or with a White House advance team. That is not how anything related to secret security operates, to my knowledge. If the SOP has changed in the last 20 years, then US Secret Service procedures have dramatically deteriorated, or else someone who does not want to secure US principles to the traditional standard, or at least not consistently, is now in charge. Having seen how closely an event is scrutinized in advance and how many layers of staffers in both the White House and the campaign need to sign off on it, let us look at the First Lady. FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States, chose to speak at 5 p.m. on July 13th, 2024 at North Pittsburgh at a closed event of 200 at a casino. 5 p.m. was the exact time of President Trump's speech in Butler, PA. FLOTUS's event was 54 minutes away from President Trump's. And I post a map there to show you how nearby it is. It's really practically a straight shot on a highway. Vice President Kamala Harris also spoke in Pennsylvania that day at an event broadcast from 1 to 5 p.m. at the Philadelphia Convention Center at an APIA Votes, Asian and Pacific Islander America Vote, town hall. Press around this event describes VP Harris as our nation's first Asian American vice president. The point is, both surrogates for President Biden were speaking at closed, secure venues with limited entry points. Did FLOTUS's event and Harris's require dozens of top Secret Service operatives, leaving President Trump exposed? Did these two events require all of the tall Secret Service operatives, or all of the Secret Service operatives that were actually weapons? How did the Secret Service operatives who were with First Lady Jill Biden react? Really important question, pay attention. When it was clear that a gunman had fired at and injured a president less than an hour away. Was FLOTUS whisked out of her casino event, as is standard when there is a heightened security context in the country? Or did she calmly finish her event? Where did she go after that? Did Secret Service get her to a more secure location than the one that was initially planned for her? That heightened response would have been standard under normal circumstances. Same thing with Vice President Harris, by the way. At that point, it would not have been known if the attack on President Trump was on President Trump alone, or perhaps an attack by a foreign enemy on multiple US principles. What communications did FLOTUS office have with the White House Chief of Staff, with the Secret Service, with the campaign? It would be normal for there to be coordination related to security. I ask all of this. I see the First Lady as suspect number one, hypothetically speaking, of course, lawyers, in my concern about who it was who may have put President Trump in danger. I see from the outside a White House in chaos. By the way, I wrote this 5 days ago, before this was all over the news, that the White House was in chaos. I see clearly that there is a civil war inside the White House. The DNC, the chief of staff probably, certainly the donors, are furious that President Biden, with his obvious dementia, is not gracefully stepping aside following his disastrous performance in the last presidential debate. In any other context, the pressure would be on the president to do so. He would be both bribed and nonviolently threatened or badgered by the DNC, by donors, by staff, etc., and he would eventually get the message and elegantly step out of the way. That obviously is not happening. Reports, and these are leaked no doubt by furious donors and DNC operatives, are that the family, and specifically that Mrs. Biden and Hunter Biden, are unmoved and preventing this graceful exit. This is a really Shakespearean situation. There may well be a last feverish, embattled holdout situation. And by the way, I wrote this also before, sorry, Loki's joining us, before President Biden announced that he had COVID and withdrew from visibility. There may well be a last feverish, embattled holdout situation with a demented principal essentially held hostage by his family, a power-crazed first lady, quote, in charge, end quote, and a drug-addicted Hunter standing at her side, all of them hanging on for dear life, resisting at all costs the encirclement, relentless pressure, and rage of the mafia-like powers of the DNC and Democratic donors. They may be resisting even the advice of their uneasy staffers. Notice that you barely know the names of Biden White House or campaign staffers. They want to protect their reputations in this debacle. I certainly see this overall scenario in the organizing of legacy media into creating situations that embarrass and expose President Biden's dementia, situations that would have to be engineered and signed off by Biden's own team. You have to ask yourself thus, who is running the United States of America? I'm going to read that again. Who is running the United States of America? There are 1,000 decisions a day that a president needs to make. President Biden's mind is gone. He cannot make them. Lobbyists from both parties describe a White House that they enjoy greatly because they say you can put anything in front of this president and he will sign it. Who is running the United States? Is it, as with First Lady Edith Wilson, who secretly ran the country for 2 years after 1919 when President Wilson suffered a stroke that left him impaired, Mrs. Biden? When President Biden is on camera, you see that it is First Lady Jill Biden who directs his glance, his words, his movement. In those 1,000 presidential decisions a day, is she also directing his pen? If not she, then who? It is not a trivial question. Whoever is actually running America, it is clear that Mrs. Biden does not wish to leave the Oval Office or the White House. She and her husband, and certainly her stepson, are all at risk of investigation or worse under a new Trump. More than anyone who is fully. So in my calculus, President Trump's rival is not the impaired President Biden. It is the First Lady. I have seen up close how the unlimited power of the presidency and the nearness to unlimited power of the vice presidency can destabilize the wisest judgment and seduce the strongest mind. This level of power has an addictive quality. People cannot stand to give it up. They will do almost anything to keep it. The weird lapses at Butler, PA, the weird messaging after the assassination attempt from Director Cheadle, who, nota bene, note well, is a Jill Biden advocated hire, have a ragged, improvised quality. A destabilized, desperate first lady theoretically could, don't sue me, imagine that she might, via her staff, direct all of the able, experienced Secret Service agents, all of the tall Secret Service agents, to her own event and to the vice president's, and that she could thus leave her rival physically exposed in Butler, PA, and that she could get away with it. In a POTUS or FLOTUS office, everything is about deniability. Directions are put on paper as rarely as possible. No one would ever say directly in 2001 in a Bush Jr. White House, don't follow up on warnings about a terrorist attack. Just as no one would ever say directly in a Biden White House, hey, leave a security vulnerability open for President Trump's event in Butler, Pennsylvania. The outcome that leadership wishes, if it is a bad one, is usually inferred by those around the principal by reading between the lines. The communication tenor is much more like England's King Henry II's line, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? And this is a quote from a history book. Several nights took Henry II's outburst, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest, to mean that the king wanted Becket dead. They murdered Becket near the altar of Canterbury Cathedral on December 29th, 1170, end quote. There has been historic reluctance to challenge any first lady, but someone made the decision to surround President Trump with tiny female Secret Service agents. And by the way, since I wrote this, it's now emerged that they're not even Secret Service agents, I understand. At least one of whom cowered behind him while he was being shot at, and who appeared later not to know how to manage her holster. All this happened when who knows how many tall, strong, experienced Secret Service agents were just 54 minutes away. And by the way, since I wrote this essay, I just learned this morning that in 2021, President Trump asked the Secret Service already to get out of his detail what he called the fat Secret Service agents who couldn't run down the street. Already 3 years ago, he was concerned that he was being assigned subpar or physically unfit Secret Service agents, which just makes the fact that he's been campaigning or in the public eye this whole time pretty extraordinary. Someone made sure to arrange to be short of a third counter sniper team at the venue. Someone made sure to fail to secure a building 130 meters away from the speaker. Someone is directing Secret Security Director Cheadle to give nonsensical answers. This is itself a message about impunity. Most chillingly to me is that someone directed a guard in military uniform to point his rifle directly at the van with a wounded President Trump in it before raising it again. And I linked to that video. I think all of this is meant, if not to murder, certainly to seek to intimidate President Trump into abandoning the campaign trail. I think FLOTUS and her staff need to answer questions. I think that they need to yield records about the staff's communications, if any, with Director Cheadle. I'm sorry, but I do. Still, what a time in which we are living. Maybe something beyond politics, even beyond fascist politics, which, as I keep trying to warn you, tries to intimidate the opposition, imprison it, or worse, is at work. It's kind of amazing that the bullet intended to kill him just grazed a man who happened to turn his head. It's kind of amazing that his family hosted a national convention 3 days later. It's kind of amazing that they are all not fully traumatized. This whole event calls to mind that aphorism, man proposes, God disposes. The veils are falling away. Americans see clearly that someone in power wanted President Trump dead. They see clearly that this fight is not over. Americans are reasoning accordingly. They will make their choices accordingly. Meanwhile, may all be safe, may all survive. And I ended with an image that you should really look at on my Substack. You can see it online too, of that American flag that sort of inexplicably contorted itself in the wind into what looks very much like an angel. All right. So that is my essay about the First Lady of the United States. And before we go on, I really want to just thank our sponsor. We have sponsors for these videos, and we're very proud to have Native Path as our sponsor. And if you go to getnativepath.com/Daily Clout, you get 45% off. I could read the script. It's a collagen product that you can put into smoothies. It's also a hydration product and a sleep product. I could read you the script, but I would really much rather tell you that it's changed my life because, as you may know, I have often mobility issues, including an active limp from a spinal injury, spinal bifida occulta, and I don't know how they do it. I don't know how it works, but literally when I take the collagen product, I don't have mobility issues. I don't have pain. I don't get it. I don't know how. And when I take the sleep product, I have the deepest sleep of my life and the most restorative. Brian too. So I'm not going to read a script. I'm just going to tell you this. And if you want deeper sleep, if you want, healthier skin, healthier hair, healthier nails, more energy, all of that is real. But more profoundly to me is whatever this stuff does for injuries that affect mobility or inflammation that affects mobility. Absolutely incredible. It's been making me want to leap around, work out with weights, do all these things that I was really just too impaired to want to do before I took it. So please go to getnativepath.com/Daily Clout for 45% off and let me know how you do, because it's really life-changing for me. I never want to be without it. All right. Now let's talk about your questions and comments. And I see we have a big audience online for this conversation. Let's see. Screw This says LIHOP, which stands for Let It Happen on Purpose. And I think the time has come to look at that. There's a reason, looking back, this time was really revealing a lot. For the last 5 years, the drumbeat has been conspiracy theorist as a pejorative. And there's been a lot of energy and effort going into making that be a pejorative, like the last thing you would want to be called. Well, what does that do? It prevents people from asking very basic questions about something that I can tell you as a former political consultant is normal, which is people at the highest levels, certainly of government and of campaigns, don't issue press releases about everything. And a lot of decisions are made without a paper trail in closed rooms, and you won't know about them. So that's why I, am determined to read events backwards and look at what happened and then see who it benefited and then start asking questions. That's what gets me called a conspiracy theorist. But I think if you, at this point, aren't reasoning like that in the world, you are an idiot. You're not thinking critically. And honestly, as I've said in another essay, if at this point you're not asking questions that may not align with the conclusions you're told to reach by spokespeople, you're not as safe as those of us who are reading events with a critical eye. Okay, so this is trying to watch it, and it either freezes or the sound is garbled. Let me know if it's clear now. Okay, it seems to be streaming well now. And I hope that it's recorded well, and then we'll just post it on Daily Clout and on Outspoken, and hopefully you'll be able to watch it all the way through. But I don't like hearing that the sound is garbled. We were watching the RNC last night, and there were major interruptions. Obviously, there's been a power outage this morning that's global by a company that is affiliated with the DNC, as I understand it, and you know, we can expect communications interruptions at a pretty major level, unfortunately. Another friend of mine says we should be looking more closely at Nancy Pelosi too. I don't have evidence for that. I can't reason through that, but I know that there's been enough about January 6th and Nancy Pelosi that, I mean, look, everyone who's senior at the White House has to be asked questions, has to have their communications subpoenaed because a president was shot at, right? And he was in the custody of their Secret Service. So obviously, you know, everyone in a decision-making role has to be investigated. Much respect to you. Okay, B says, wow, this is a thorough analysis and commentary. Thank you. MAGA gives me some wonderful emojis with lots of American flags. Honey Badger 4 USA says, excellent composition and necessary. Circulate this far and wide, everyone. Well, I would certainly appreciate that because I don't really want to be alone with this analysis without it being widely circulated, because the more public this analysis is, the safer I am, you know, the less danger any one person is in. So please do circulate it. Let's see. Oh, and Kathy Dolbeck in the comments, these are Facebook comments, that's so nice, showed a daily the flag link that looks like an angel, and I really appreciate you doing that. So thank you. And Honey Badger 4 USA has really helped me. If you like my work and our work, honestly, the best way you can help, because it is very difficult, people's donations dollars are down because everyone's suffering so much economically. The best thing you can do is to support our sponsors and buy their products. So if you value this analysis, please go to getnativepath.com/dailyclout, and that link is right there. Thank you, Honey Badger 4 USA. Ilana A, great insight into how the system works at the highest levels. Well, this is very interesting. I didn't know this. Snow White 75 asks, where is Jill? Has anyone seen her since the 13th? Where is Jill? She seems to be missing in action. Well, I didn't verify this is a great question. And again, as I said in my essay, her and her team's reaction to the shooting by 6:11 p.m. on the 13th needs to be scrutinized. And it should be public, right? If she started her event in North Pittsburgh at 5, she should still be there at 6:11. So I'd like to hear from anyone who was at the Sons and Daughters of Italy event, you know, on the record, or leak it, right? This is time for leaking. This is time to be a patriot. I'd like to hear from anyone who watched the event. Certainly the Asian American Pacific Islander American Vote Association should have video, and they need to be asked to release the video that they have at their event for Vice President Harris. It should be public. See if you can find it, interwebs. See if the full video of the First Lady also be released. And so where is the First Lady? Morning of her on stage in a blue dress while President Biden tried to kiss another blonde woman in a blue dress, not realizing it wasn't his wife, but I don't know the date of that clip. And it would be unlikely to be recent because, to my knowledge, the president is still ill with COVID, allegedly, although I confess I haven't checked thoroughly this morning because I've been preparing for this. So let me know if we've seen it. Anyone out there in the comments, where's Jill? Have we seen Jill? Let's see. Kids Sherpa 4 says, hi, Naomi, Sarah from Team 3. Hey, honored to have one of our wonderful scientific and medical volunteers who wrote the 104 reports that we're publishing in the book, the Pfizer Papers, and that saved a lot of lives, many millions of lives. Sarah from Team 3, this was an excellent analysis. My fear is that there is a profound lack of courage in Congress. I feel as though they are all showmen and no real investigations. Well, Sarah, you know, this is why I love you guys. You're so smart and perceptive. This is a very important question, because what you all need to understand, I'm sorry to be so direct, but it's a time for directness, is that this messaging from the inadequate security in Butler, PA, but also the messaging from Director Cheadle isn't just aimed at President Trump. It's aimed at everyone in Congress. It's aimed at everyone in the Senate of both parties. It's aimed at the Supreme Court. It's aimed at all of you, every single American citizen. Okay. So what do I mean by this? What we're seeing is a coup, right? What we're seeing is the assertion of a coup. And again, I broke, maybe other people have broken the story of how many senior staffers in the Biden White House and Biden campaign are from the Department of Defense or the Department of Homeland Security. We don't know what foreign nation or globalists have aligned with some senior members of HHS, senior members of the Department of Defense, and senior members of, well, certainly what looks like the intelligence community, to do what happened to our country for the last 3 years, right? Because if they were doing their jobs, obviously none of it would have happened. So it looks like there are white hats and black hats at the highest levels of our nation, even now. Excuse me. But what you really need to understand is that when the Secret Service director gives nonsensical answers, like, please get out of the habit of hearing messaging from the White House as if it is always intended to make sense or be taken at face value. Sometimes it isn't. And messaging that is as dismissive as, oh, we didn't put another sniper team on that roof because it had a 1/4-inch slope, right? That's messaging that's designed to say to everyone in Congress, including the courageous Marsha Blackburn, right, who's forging ahead, or Josh Hawley, who's raising questions. It's designed to say, we can do to anyone what we did to President Trump. Okay, that's what they're trying to tell everyone. And I always want to remind people of what happened in Italy in the 1920s with the ascent of Benito Mussolini. Italy was a fragile democracy, just like we are at this point, a fragile democracy. Benito Mussolini's black shirts escalated violence, roughed up the opposition, targeted the opposition, killed some opposition leaders, and then it started to intimidate parliamentarians. And the parliamentarians kept legislating in parliament as if they were still in a democracy, even as the black shirts were assembling in parliament and making it clear that there was no longer a democracy, that they were in charge through a show of force. So that's what I see happening now. And it's very dangerous and very scary, but please understand that that's what's happening now. Don't expect normal responses from lawmakers because, secret security secures them too, right? They're scared. Everyone's scared. Everyone thoughtful is scared because Secret Service is saying, and DHS members who are part of Biden's, campaign and White House are saying, you can't do anything to us. All right. Now, the good news is, I hope it's good news, that there's kind of still a civil war. Democratic donors are very powerful. They include some of the most powerful people in the country, if not in the world, right? So they may not want the outcomes that those people behind Director Cheadle want, or certainly the outcomes that whatever foreign entity bought the Bidens, and I think it's China, they may not want that outcome. It serves China to have a crazy wife, an addicted son, and a demented puppet in the White House. But it doesn't serve, you're seeing this, Chuck Schumer and his supporters. It doesn't serve Hakeem Jeffries and his supporters, right? So even though it's a dire, scary, physically threatening situation, there are powerful people at loggerheads. And as my husband, Brian O'Shea, always points out, it takes monsters to fight monsters. So the monsters are right now, but it's a dangerous time. So please be careful, everyone. please be careful. And it's really time, if you haven't spoken up now, you need to speak up now, because the most dangerous thing would be if Secret Service thinks we've intimidated the American people, we can do whatever we want, right? They need to see that you are not intimidated. They need to see that you're armed, that you're training, that you are shooting, right? Like put your peacefully, right? Peacefully, self-defense, but they need to see that that you have your food, you have your water, you have your assets downloaded. I would definitely buy gold at a moment like this, right? Not to, go commercial. We do have a gold sponsor, which is Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, but any precious metals, agent you want to buy gold and silver from, I would do it, right? Buy land, okay? Like it is not going to get better before it gets worse. But these bad guys need to see that we are not backing down, because they're playing their final cards, right? And once you've had the Secret Service basically publicly blow off the responsibility for almost killing a president, there are very few cards left, right? So now they're trying, like you've got the power outage, you've got the cyber outage, you're going to have food shortages, as I've warned, water shortages. You're definitely going to have some, terrorist attack, which will cause a state of emergency so that people will be dissuaded from going to the polls. But just stand fast, stand firm, don't get hysterical, don't overreact. Honestly, don't read the legacy media, right? Don't get spun up. Ignore the pandemics they're going to roll out. To the extent, obviously, get good information. I'm not telling you to, take risks with real hazards, but don't believe what you're told without verifying it yourself. Don't believe what you're told by the people who rolled out the last pandemic. Obviously, they don't have your best interests at heart. You need to see that. They tried to kill. Oh, I don't know who did it yet. It's still an open question. But what is clear is that the Secret Service did not normally secure an event at which the choice of at least half the population, maybe more, was speaking. So if they can do it to him, they can do it to you. So, and to both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, in Senate, in state houses. So be very vigilant, everyone, but do not fear. All right. I think I should stop there. Again, the sponsor, if you want to support them, I want you to experience this stuff for yourself, is getnativepath.com/daily clout. It's the collagen product that has me leaping about like a little mountain goat. But there's also a sleep product, which will knock you out in a good way, and a hydration product, which I like as well. I guess everyone share this because it needs to be shared, and pray for me and my husband, and for yourselves and your families. I know we're going to get through this. And thank you for listening. You can find me on Outspoken on Substack. You can find us on Daily Clout. You can become a donor, a member. You can be a paid subscriber or a free subscriber. If you can afford to be a paid subscriber on Outspoken, please do. It's how we pay for all of the wonderful reporting you get on Daily Clout and on Substack. And you can go to Best of Daily Clout on Substack as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be safe. Oh, there's